So I need to make a few disclaimers because as if I knew that this book would be located in particular spaces. So this whole day I've had people talk about where they locate the book. And it's important for me to make the disclaimer that I am not a scholar of critical studies of race relations. So if I say anything about race and racism and race, and race relations in these next few minutes, please forgive me because it is not my field, so I may err because there are experts here. I'm also not a scholar of critical studies of diversity. So if my understanding of diversity is not your understanding of diversity, again, please pardon me because I have not studied the big people that have studied on diversity, because that's not what I do. And lastly, I am not a scholar of critical studies of decolonization. So I hear a lot about decolonization, and a lot of what has been said here today, again, is around decolonization. That is not my field. So if you're looking for a speaker and you think about me, please do invite me to come and talk about sex, because I work. So I'm a scholar of sexual and reproductive health and rights. So I don't know how I came to be here. However, I do want to tell you that I was born and bred in Butterworth, and Butterworth is in a place called Transkei, and I deliberately, I'm going to use the word invoke because it's been used a lot today. I will invoke Transkei for people who may not remember or who may not have known that there was Transkei. Transkei is where I come from. So I am not a South African. I don't come from South Africa. South Africa was happening around me. South Africa was happening around Transkei. The rest of the map where you see the color is lighter, that is where South Africa was. And those of us who were in places that were called independent states or self-government states were in places such as Transkei. So I am from Butterworth. And also it's important that you know that I'm 45 this year. So I was born in 1973. And that's very important in terms of how I engage and understand knowledge and knowledge production. Because at age 45, having grown up in Transkei and until I was an adult, I know history and I know the past and I know South Africa as it is told and retold to us. And I'm saying this because those of you who are here today or watching the video as it will be out need to understand that you have a lot of responsibility in telling the stories, because we listen to your stories. We do not know the South Africa. I can tell you a lot about my place where I come from, but I can't tell you about other places that I have not lived in. I rely on the histories that are told and retold. So depending on how these stories are told, and then I will receive them and I will do something about them. So knowledge that is told allows for what I call continuities and discontinuities, and that is where my conversation is going to be this afternoon. That is very important for us to think about continuities and discontinuities. I've also realized that there are not many people in this room who are lecturers. So again, I bring something different because I'm a lecturer. So a lecturer means that I teach. That's what I do every day. And as a lecturer in South Africa, I also get to do research and get to do community engagement. But primarily, is that the right way? Primarily, my responsibility is to teach. And again, I do not speak for all lecturers who are here or watching the video. If you have a different experience of being a lecturer, then it's okay. It's just different. And our experiences as lecturers for some of us, and certainly for myself, is to read. And we read the books, and once we have read all the books that we have access to in the library, we then translate that for the students. So we walk into a class, into a 60-minute or 45 minutes lecture, and we should tell the students what we have read. So what that means is we are not really clever people, because we read what is in the library, then we put it either in PowerPoint if you want, or in transparencies if you old version of myself, and then we tell it to the students. And that creates the continuities between the knowledge that is already there and what the students are receiving at that point in time in your classroom. Now, there are a few things that we have to do as lecturers. Then we decide as lecturers what we want the students to know. And I think that's very important in today's conversation and taking this conversation forward, because this conversation is about what we want people to know. So the stories that are in this book are the stories that we want people to know. And as lecturers, when we are sold many books, reps come knocking at our doors to tell us to buy this book and that book and that book, and to prescribe it and to make it a reference. And when we do that, then we decide what we want students to know. We decide what we want students to read, and we put it in course pegs, and we decide what to tell people of everything that we have read. Remember, we've got only 7 weeks, and in between that, there will be a fees must fall, then there will be assignments, then there will be tests, so you decide to make conscious decisions about what you're going to tell students when you have the opportunity to tell students something. And you also decide how you're going to tell the students what you need to tell them, because that is also going to be important in terms of what they know. How you told them is going to be important in terms of how they know. We decide on assessments and what to expect them to know, which is the knowledge, and to reproduce in an assessment is what you deem to be important as a lecturer. So if they can demonstrate that they have understood this concept, and they can define, describe with examples and all the things that we ask in exams or in research projects, then we mark them to have known, and then we can give them 70% and they can go out there in the field. So I've been asked to talk about acting responsibly in pursuit of new knowledge production. And I'm talking this way because I want to locate that within our roles as lecturers. Because as lecturers, I believe that we are the interface between existing knowledge and the classroom. And as lecturers, we thus create opportunities for new knowledge, if you want. Because remember, on the receiving side, on the student side, it is new knowledge. They may not have heard it before, unless they are repeating the course. So, we generate new knowledge in the classroom. And we do that deliberately. We reinforce existing knowledge as well. So we decide what new knowledge we want to generate for someone to be called a graduate of our university. And we also decide what information and knowledge we want to reinforce for someone to be called a graduate of our university. Now, it's a very tricky situation to be asked to talk about acting responsible in pursuit of new knowledge. Because in our scholarly endeavor, you might just find yourself to have acted irresponsibly when you need to generate new knowledge. It's very difficult from where we are seated as lecturers to generate new knowledge in a responsible way. So I am not sure how to speak about acting responsibly in pursuit of new knowledge, because in our field as academics, what is acceptable disciplined conduct has already been defined for us. And if you start to move away from what is acceptable disciplined conduct, then you might find yourself in trouble, because then you are doing something that is unacceptable, because we have never seen this being done before. You are being ill-disciplined because we have never done it this way, and therefore misconduct might follow because people disagree with the ways in which you do something. And again, it's about new. So in fact, we are in a very precarious position, because we are being asked to do the new in the old form. So there isn't much that is new that we can bring to the table without risking, our access to the bonds that our colleagues spoke about earlier. I'm going to give an example. There's many examples that I could have chosen, but this is the one that is accessible to me right now. And I've got access to these many examples because of my many years of teaching in high school and academia. So I know I've got many examples. But this one is one of the most recent examples, and it's accessible to me right now because it clearly demonstrates, at least for me, that you can be ill-disciplined and you can be irresponsible, and you can go offline when you are creating new knowledge. So a particular textbook has this as a section in a chapter, and it's written in exactly these ways. Where there's dots, there is a lot more that's said. It's written considerations when working with clients from diverse cultural and linguistic backgrounds. And I have highlighted for you diverse cultural and linguistic backgrounds because that is what I'm going to be talking about in the next 2 slides. And in fact, this textbook also goes on to talk about what are the possible solutions to these considerations. Now, I know we don't have a lot of time, but I do want you to think about my previous conversation where I said, as lecturers, we decide what existing information we want students to have access to. to retain, to remember, and to reproduce, and to go out to the world and be professionals and know that this is the knowledge that they go out with. So this is the answer according to this textbook. Issues in work, that's the heading in that particular textbook. Issues in working with clients from diverse cultural and linguistic backgrounds. And the issues are listed in a table format, just like I did here. And they say there's a section, there's eye contact, there's touching, there's use of reinforcers, there's interactional style, there's mode of conversational style, there's mode of address, so what has disappeared there. So this book tells us that when you are working with clients of diverse cultural and linguistic backgrounds, you might find as a practitioner, I come from a practitioner background, though I'm not one of them. Direct contact may be considered disrespectful. Physical contact is unwelcome. Some families are particular about reinforcers, for example, use of sweets or praise. Men may be uncomfortable receiving information from a woman. Children are seen, not heard. There's, clients from diverse cultural backgrounds may not like to have to answer personal questions or getting straight to the point. Modes of address, there was something there that they may ask to be addressed with a prefix, right? Or they don't want to be called by their first names. So this is a list of issues, right? That is in the book. Then I then need to understand what issues mean. And then issues is defined in the dictionary as associated with decisions and disagreements. And the dictionary says we use the word issue in a similar way to problem and trouble. And this comes from a part of the world where English is not lacking. So I am not confused about how they use the word issue in those issues. So in those issues, they use issue to mean problems and troubles that you might encounter when you deal with clients from different backgrounds, because they are from where the dictionary also comes from. So the questions for me were, why are these behaviors listed here an issue? And who are these behaviors an issue for? Who decided that these behaviors are an issue? When did this field of study decide that these behaviors are an issue? What purpose did it serve at that time when they labeled these behaviors as the issue? What message does it continue to reinforce if we refer to these behaviors as an issue needing a solution, and we prescribe the textbook, and we teach from the textbook, and we assess from the textbook, and we graduate students from the textbook? So what purpose does it serve to continue to teach about these behaviors as an issue? And this is just one example. There's many examples that make behaviors or things like this to be an issue. So what solution is needed to resolve the issues that are listed in this book? And for whom? So are we creating these solutions for the diverse clients, or are we creating these solutions for the person who gazed at the diverse subjects and found them to be different, decided that they needed to be resolved because there's an issue there? So I feel that it's important that when we are acting in pursuit of new knowledge, we ask these questions. That if we do not ask questions such as this, and we can go on and on with the list of questions. These are just my questions, but the list of questions is important, because if we don't ask these questions, then we allow this knowledge to claim the hegemony of truth, because then it becomes true that diverse clients are these ones, and that these diverse clients in fact behave and act and expect what is listed there. And these are the things that continue to sit with us, those of us who work in these fields, those of us who are exposed to this curriculum every day. It does sit with us, authors of today's book, that we still continue to be subjected to the kind of violence. It may not be physical violence, it may not be with bullets, but when you are sitting in the classroom and you are being taught that there is diversity, and diversity comes in those ways, then it becomes very difficult for us to be responsible producers of new knowledge in the field. So in this conversation, I really would like to add that we need to ask these questions in order to develop new research questions, in order to develop new ways of knowing, new ways of teaching, and new ways of assessing. Otherwise, if we don't ask these questions, these ways of teaching and these ways of knowing and of assessing and the knowledge that we come out of universities with will continue to sit with us, and we will translate that to the people that we work with in the field. So it's very important that we ask these questions, because in other societies, because remember where I told you where I come from. So where I come from, it is perfectly normal and it is okay for people to expect to be addressed respectfully with a prefix. And in fact, where I moved to a different world outside of Butterworth, and people call people by Hazel and Chris and all, it becomes very uncomfortable, because I am not used to calling elders by their names. So if someone says, it's okay, you can call me, I don't want to mention this for names. It's okay, you can call me Claudine, and I'm like, it's not okay, we don't call people of your age by their first names, right? Because where I come from, try to call anyone who is younger than me and they call me by my name, it's war. Adults expect, where I come from, adults expect that kids should not make noise in the company of adults. And in fact, they should not talk until they are spoken to. And it is perfectly normal. And you will find that, in fact, where I come from a both township and village background. In the townships, the houses, we all know them, we call them 4-roomed houses, 1 living room. And if kids were with their parents in the living room, and then there's a visitor who is an adult, they immediately retreat to the small room, the small bedroom. Like, it's normal. Nobody tells them to do that. They know, because it is expected that they may not be part of adults' conversations. So it is okay in my culture, at some point, you know, in some conversations, to not give eye contact, because different types of eye contact mean different things. So there is eye contact that is okay. There is eye contact that says, did you give me that look when I was asking you why you did not wash the dishes? So eye contact is not always welcomed, because it means different things to different people in different occasions. And where I come from, it's okay for a man or even a woman sometimes to be uncomfortable, to be touched by by a person of a different gender. So it's okay for people. There are times when people touch. In fact, where I come from, I know that if I walk into a room and there's adults, I greet them and I shake their hands. And if you did not do that, you are in trouble. So touch is okay. But there are different touches, and then there are different occasions of touching. And then if you touch inappropriately at a different occasion to a different person, and then it becomes inappropriate, then it is a problem for us. So touch is not always welcome, and it is okay for that community. It is okay to not use certain reinforcers. Reinforcers are used, and they are acceptable reinforcers, but there are unacceptable reinforcers as well. And if candy will make your teeth, rot, then maybe our parents don't like to give us candy as reinforcers. It's okay to not ask uncomfortable questions, because sometimes people do feel uncomfortable about answering personal questions. But in this discipline, where this information or knowledge is taught, for example, there's a lot of asking of questions by the practitioner of their clients. And we believe that the more questions you ask, the better the communication and the outcomes of the communication or of the consultation, they call it. So it's okay for questions that are personal. I remember there was a time in my life when I was doing my PhD, and I visited a place outside South Africa where most people speak English and most people are white. And the question that I found a lot of the time was the question about, who I am and where I'm from and where is your family and then who is your family. And that's a very uncomfortable question for me. And I do not know, but I found myself saying this to other people, that don't start with that question. That question is loaded. When you ask people about their family, it takes a very long time. You should know the person. Good rapport should be developed. Because if you ask me about my family today, I will tell you I come from a family of 3 and I've got 1 brother. Then in 6 months down the line, when I tell you my brother has been involved in an accident, and then you say, oh, I thought your brother was the one in the car. No, I mean my brother, like my other brother. I was not lying when I said I had 1 brother, but I'm still not lying when I say my other brother, not this one, is involved in an accident. So questions about family are not questions that we are dishonest about, but there are ways in which we answer, we ask, and there are times at which it is okay now to feel that you know this person enough to be able to ask questions about family. But of course, there are people who we call people in the global north. So the people in the global north may not always know what we people in the global south, not that people in the global south are the same. People in the global south are not the same. However, the pursuit of knowledge creation, new knowledge, means that we acknowledge that knowledge production and flow should be a two-way process, and we take a stand. And I'm lacking an English word. I don't want to say a radical stand because I might sound radical. I'm not. But we do need to take a stand against knowledge that clearly has been constructed by one person looking at the other and then making decisions, writing, producing, and publishing. It's very important that knowledge production should be a bidirectional process, because the receiver may receive the message differently from the point of departure of the teller. It's very important that we have different tellers from different parts of the world, because to resist this is then to perpetuate continuities and traditional forms of teaching that are driven by notions of superiority of existing points of departure. Resisting these perpetuates forms of learning that foster passive absorption by the receiver. And in this example, for example, we are expected to teach our students and to give this textbook and to ask the question in the assessment and to mark correct if a student gives the list that was in that table. And if the student does not give that list, then the answer becomes incorrect. So in fact, you should give the incorrect answer to be marked correct in this case. So in fact, what we are trying to do now is to say, if we're working with clients from diverse backgrounds, which for me when I was reading that, read black experiences because they were familiar to me, meant non-Western experiences, it normalizes whiteness. It says, because that is what we find, not only in this book, but in other many psychology books that I have read, that what we find is a lot of work that says, this is what is happening, and then if the book has 14 chapters, chapter 13 is about diversity, then chapter 14 is the conclusion. So it problematizes the other. It says, this is what you will find normal, then there might just be a chance that you will meet these people that are in chapter 13 who are the other. And this is how you will have to deal with the people that are described in chapter 13 of this book. And in fact, that you need to find ways and solve this problem that you might encounter. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you are a black student, Indian student, colored student, or white student. That is what it means. So a lot of that knowledge I find is othering. It is dangerous, it is condescending, it is top-down, it is traumatic, it reproduces the things that sit with us. Now there's a problem in academia, and that problem I've already described, which is that whatever is acceptable discipline to conduct has already been defined for us. And if you say something against it or act against it, then you might be transgressing. So to not transgress, we are expected to do the new in the form of the old. And we all know the risks that are involved if you do transgress. I'm not going to go into the risks that are involved when you speak out or when you do work that is against the norm. But I mean, we are in the space of the lady, our person who opened the conversation this morning said new ideas should come. So I'm hoping that a continuation of this conversation with Nish will happen, so that Nish understands that if there's an expectation for new knowledges, there should also be a program to, in fact, mitigate the risks, because there are risks in trying to bring new knowledges. And it's very important that we become responsible by coming up with a program to mitigate the risks. We need to understand that because of all the risks involved, many people in academia continue with the things that sit with us and will reproduce the existing knowledge, because we want our work to be in peer-reviewed journals, we want our work to be listed, we want our work to be in reputable journals, we want our work to be in high-impact factor journals, we want our work to be international. And only if you are, or you've already arrived, like professors who's the first author here, you can in fact give a damn and say whether it is reputable international or it will be listed or not, I'm going to produce it anyway. So some of us have to wait until we get to this point to say we don't have it, because it's important for us that we continue to reproduce the old version, because the old version is the one that gives us probation confirmation. Otherwise, no probation will ever be confirmed by this. I am sorry to have to say that, if I'm a bearer of bad news. No, you will not receive any honors at VETS and any other university. When they say, let's nominate the best researchers, if your work is this, then it does not get listed as best research outputs. You will not receive promotion. So if you're still looking for a promotion, then you might as well wait another few more years before you start to produce in these ways. It will not get you to Google Scholar and Scopus. So if you still care about your Google Scholar, I'm told to wrap up. and scopus. And if you still want to be a rated scientist, until you are already rated, please wait. If you want to be a rated scientist, you've got to do the stuff that is above. And it's very interesting because what we have observed, those of us who still work with the list, is that some of the people who create that list and try to enforce it on us have in fact walked on the easy road to where they are. And now they are looking down at us from some floors and they are telling us every day to please make sure that it is listed, it is international, it is peer reviewed, it is rated, it is all of that. Because they are sitting there and they are saying this because our universities are interested in what is described in text as reactive rather than substantive growth. And this is the work that will allow for substantive growth in our knowledge production. It is not the number of students that we enroll, but because money comes with the number of students, it's very important that we now push numbers instead of pushing the substantial work that is the one we are about today. The kind of work that we have to do restricts novelty. We have to use the exact same methods that were used by our seniors and reference those seniors. Even if you don't really agree with them, to do this is very difficult because this is novelty. This is the stuff that we all would like to do. We would like to publish in English, Afrikaans, and Xhosa, but it's very difficult to be able to do that because otherwise you will have to reference where you got that from, which epistemological blah blah blah. Allow you to do that. The restrictions, make it very difficult for us to push the boundaries and to create new knowledge. So this is my last slide because I've been told to wrap up. And I asked someone in preparation for this presentation who is a lecturer of psychology at another university if he knows who Chabane Magani is, and he didn't know. Now, for a psychologist, he's a psychologist and he lectures in psychology. For a psychologist to not know who the first black South African psychologist is in the country, that's what we are sitting with. Because if you ask all of the psychologists and the students, first year, second year, third year, master to PhD, who Sigmund Freud is, they all know, like 5 out of 5, everybody knows who the father of psychology was, but we do not know our own South African father of psychology. And we need more people like Shabani Mangani, we need more people like Barbara Bozo who are going to call out on foolish science, which is based on scientific methods that pass peer review and get published in journals. We need more people like the ones who invited us here to have beautiful food, and I'm told we're going to have wine as well.
Ooh, I think it is still a very, very heavy feeling. It's 2019, but a lot of the things that came up today feel as if they should have already been rectified, but the rawness of today's conversation just speaks to how much more work needs to be done and how much more we need these spaces and these types of books that disrupt the status quo. The beauty of this book is that it actually gives us narratives, people's personal narratives, but the personal is political, which we have come to understand within the South African context. Absolutely enjoyed it. I hope there are more of these spaces for us to engage and to criticize, not in a way to diminish the work that has been done, but to find new avenues and new possibilities. So that is what I'm taking from today, is that these new avenues for us young academics have sort of, the signposts have been put up. It is about whether you're brave enough to walk down that road, as bravely as Prof. Madikizela has. So I'm left with that there's a lot that we're sitting with. It's just that we don't have the language perhaps or the space to do it. So loved the conference and hoping for more spaces such as this.